Volume 2, Chapter 1, Part 2. This is what academic named Vlail Kazhnachev, who's an active member of the Russian Academy of Medical Sciences, wrote about Anastasia's ray in his article of 1996 called Living Rays and a Living Field. And he's talking about someone named Vernadsky, who's very famous in Russia on the level of Charles Darwin in the Western world. So he says, Vernadsky was probably right in asking the question, how does the ideal, which is mental, translate the planet Earth into its new evolutionary phase? How? If you say only through labor, only through explosions, or only through technogenic activity, such a primitive answer will not do. There is factual evidence showing that man is capable of exerting a remote influence on many electronic equipment readings. He can throw the measuring device out of whack, and he can do that from far away. Here in Novosibirsk, experiments are taking place on telepathic communication with, and then they list a series of towns that I can't pronounce, as well as with an American center in Florida. And the remote links between man and man, as well as between measuring device and the operator, register accurately and reliably. We are confronted with an unknown phenomenon, the interaction of living substances over huge distances. These articles, unfortunately, contain many unfamiliar terms, along with references to works of other scholars. It would be quite a task just to read them all, let alone make sense of them. Still, I have found out that scientists are aware of man's capability to make contact at a distance. They are aware also of the universal data bank used by Anastasia. She calls it the dimension of the forces of light, home to all thoughts ever produced by mankind. Modern science also speaks about this phenomenon, which it refers to as a supercomputer. I then had to figure out how I, who had never practiced any literary art, having never been trained for it, managed to write a book which continues to excite so many people. When I was in the taiga, Anastasia told me, I shall make you a writer. You will write a book and many people will read it. It will have a beneficial influence on the readers. Now the book has been written, and one might suppose that it was all due to her involvement. But then one would have to figure out how she influences other people's creative abilities. However, nobody has yet managed to figure this out. It might make things easier, of course, to pretend that I myself possessed at least a little talent and was simply setting forth the interesting information I had learnt from her. Then it seems everything would fall into place. Everything would be explained. There would be no need to waste any further time on reading scientific or religious literature or badgering specialists with questions. And here Anastasia presented a new phenomenon for which neither I nor any of the people who have been helping me can find an explanation to date. You may remember me writing in Book 1 what she said 2 years earlier. Artists will paint pictures, poets will write verse, and they will make a movie about me. You will see all this and think of me. To my question, what do you mean, can she predict the future? Anastasia's grandfather replied, Vladimir, Anastasia does not predict the future. She visualizes it and turns it into reality. Words, just words. Words come cheap. And to be honest, I didn't pay too much attention to these words, dismissing them as mere metaphor, since I had absolutely no way of even imagining how accurately everything Anastasia said would turn out to be true in real life. But the incredible does happen. Anastasia's words are starting to come true in reality. First, there was the flood of poems. A few of these poems I published at the end of Book 1. Next, Anastasia clubs started springing up in various cities. The first of these was in the city of, Gelendzhik, where they held an exhibit of paintings by the Moscow artist Alexandra Sayenko, all dedicated to Anastasia and to nature. I visited the clubhouse and looked at the walls hung with large pictures. The surrounding space seemed to change in appearance before my gaze. From the many pictures, Anastasia looked out at me with her kindly eyes. And the scenes, I couldn't get over it. Some of the pictures showed scenes from this second book, which hadn't been published yet. And there was this glowing sphere, sometimes appearing right next to Anastasia. Later, I learned that the artist painted not with a brush, but with her fingertips. Most of the pictures had already been sold, but left hanging for the duration of the exhibit, since more and more people were coming to see them. The artist presented one of them to me as a gift, depicting Anastasia's mother and father. I couldn't take my eyes off her mother's face. Offers started coming in from various film studios about making an Anastasia movie. And this was now something I was already accepting as a matter of course. As I touched the paintings and sheets of poetry with my hands, as I listened to the songs and looked at the stills from a film which had already been made, I tried to make some sense of what was going on. And now there is a Moscow research center devoted to investigating Anastasia phenomenon, which has concluded, quote, the greatest spiritual teachers known to mankind for their religious teachings and philosophical and scientific investigations cannot match the fantastic pace of Anastasia's influence on human potential. Their teachings have had a noticeable manifestation in real life only centuries and millennia after their first appearance. In some inexplicable way, over a matter of days and months, Anastasia has managed, without the aid of written doctrines and religious teachings, to directly influence people's feelings, provoking emotional outbursts and causing a surge of creativity manifest in artistic creations on the part of a whole lot of people who have been mentally touched by her. We are able to perceive them in the forms of works of art and inspired impulses towards goodness and light.